Released by Square Enix in 2010 on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, NieR would be a spin-off game to the Drakengard franchise. Directed and written by Taro Yoko and Sawako Natori, both of whom created the original Drakengard, the game was originally developed as a mirrored pair of games wherein the main difference was the age of the main character, his relationship to the driving motivation, and the year of events. For story, the game features NieR, a middle-aged man with a daughter named Yona, who is accompanied on his journey by several supporting characters, but like the Drakengard series, the entire story must be played multiple times in order to unlock a more complete ending. For gameplay, the game is mainly an action RPG, though there are several bosses and dungeons that borrow their gameplay style from a wide variety of gameplay genres. The game takes place in a timeline spawned from the original Drakengard's 5th ending, in which the main character and his dragon arrive in modern-day Earth and defeat a giant monster before being tragically killed themselves. The remnants of the bodies of the monster and the main character spawn a new fatal disease that kills most of the world and ushers in a post-apocalyptic world that eventually becomes the world of NieR. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation. As the game begins, it is summer 2049, and yet the world is blanketed with snow. We see a struggling man named NieR is offered more power by a mysterious tome in exchange for his soul. At first, NieR refuses, as some shadowy figures called Shades encroach upon him, and after defeating them he tends to his sickly daughter Yona. He warns Yona not to touch the second book nearby her, though as more Shades enter their hideout, NieR is beaten back. Desperate, he reaches out for the Black Book, and in a blast of power he's able to repel the Shades and destroy the reinforcements. However, as he returns to Yona, he finds her illness has taken a turn for the worst. As we pull away, 1,312 years have passed, and we find NieR is getting ready to set out, as Yona still has a sickly cough and he's determined to find a cure. The village they live in is a simple one, but it has a supportive community that helps NieR out by paying him for odd jobs. He comments that while things seem brighter, the world has been ravaged by a disease and the population dwindles, while the Shades that roam outside only grow. He's helped by the village twins Devila and Popola, and shares with Yona the legend of the Lunar Tear, which is a flower that is said to grant the wish of anyone that can find one. After finding and destroying Shades that were dangerously close to the village, NieR learns that Yona learned from Popola where lunar tears actually used to grow and discovers she left on her own for the lost shrine. Finding and scaling the shrine, NieR finds the place is riddled with Shades. He finds her unconscious on the shrine itself, which is protected by a mysterious tome and 2 armored sentries. NieR bashes at the barrier until it releases itself a strange book. The tome hovers in place and begins talking in a self-important manner, and amused that NieR struggles, it introduces itself as Grimoire Weiss. He offers to assist NieR with the magic barrier before him, and NieR accepts, but right as it begins, it turns out it lost its memory when NieR broke the first barrier. As Shades attack, NieR sees Weiss absorb the blood of his foes and regains some of his memory and, more importantly, magic ability. With NieR able to borrow some magic power from Weiss, the duo defeat the 2 sentries and break the barrier, freeing Yona. She wakes up and apologizes for the trouble caused, and after they escape the collapsing shrine, she explains she only wanted to find a lunar tear and get better so NieR wouldn't have to worry. However, she collapses as her condition worsens. Weiss recognizes her disease as a black scrawl, which curses its victims with strange black runes that eventually spread over their entire body. NieR also knows it's a fatal disease, but he won't give up on Yona. Later on, Devila recognizes Weiss as the White Book mentioned in the Song of Ancients she often sings that can save people from the black disease caused by the Black Book. Popola also recognizes the book and recalls the legend saying that when the Black Book Grimoire Noir plunges the world into chaos, the White Book Grimoire Weiss will appear with his sealed verses, vanquish Grimoire Noir, and restore harmony to the world. NieR suddenly feels hopeful that Noir must have caused the Black Scrawl, and thus Weiss can cure it with the right magic. Weiss believes there are more sealed verses in the shrines around the world, and notes it's awfully suspicious that the Shades and verses seem intrinsically linked. NieR is now determined to restore power to Weiss so he can cure Yona, and will kill any Shades needed to find these verses. Popola mentions that Eri Village is seeing a large collection of Shades recently, and suggests it may be linked to another shrine, so NieR and Weiss set off. Climbing the cliff faces of Eri Village, the village chief is no help. Rather, as he leaves, he spots some lunar tear flowers, and as he approaches, he's halted by a stern-faced young woman. They see some dark energy about her, and they wonder if she's a Shade, and she further surprises them by also being able to wield magic alongside deadly dual blades. They clash, but their fight is interrupted as a gigantic lizard-like Shade comes in. It turns out this beast is what the foul-mouthed woman was really aiming for, as they form an uneasy alliance to take on the monster. Staggering the monster, pulls back for now as the woman collapses, and Weiss notices she's been possessed by a Shade and is only half human. Figuring that's better than all Shade, NieR nurses her back to health, and while she introduces herself as Kaine, she warns them that the giant Shade is her prey and to stay out of her way. Returning back to the village himself, it's clear to NieR he must get stronger given this last encounter, so after losing patience with fishing, he journeys to strengthen his weapons by assisting a blacksmith outside an old military base. After fighting off the robots still active within after centuries of abandonment, including one large security robot that dislikes smoke, they leave the mechanical link to the past, earn a new sealed verse, and move on. Returning to Eri, they find Kaine and choose to help her fight the giant shade, with their new magic greatly helping. The villagers, however, don't like Kaine's half-human nature and blame her for attracting the shades here and destroying the village. It turns out Kaine is fighting to avenge her grandmother and pushes herself to the brink to fight the shade. As NieR and Weiss finally kill the shade, they rush to Kaine and urge her to come back from the brink of death, praising her fighting power and saying she can live for more than just revenge now. Declaring themselves friends now, NieR asks her to join his quest and Kaine accepts, joining the group. Learning that Yona has the Black Scrawl, she mentions she knows the king of Facade, a desert city, had the same disease, and they can see if they found some way of treating it as well. Now fighting past the wolves, scorpions, and sandstorms of the desert, they make it to Facade. Kaine explains she once saved a kid from Facade from wolves, and ever since she's been welcomed in. Otherwise, they speak a strange language and operate on an exceedingly rules-based society. Within, NieR helps up a mute girl named Thera, who repays the favor by guiding them through the city and eventually leading them to the king's manor. Unfortunately, she explains the old king died to the Black Scrawl, and the prince now lives within. As it turns out, Thera was the one saved by Kaine years ago, and they now hear the prince has gone missing in a nearby temple, but the rules of the city prevent the guards from searching for him. Kaine leverages the favor owed to her by the city to allow herself and NieR to look for the prince, and Thera disregards the city's rules entirely to come along as their guide. Finding the barren temple, they find themselves subject to the temple's rules and magic. While they do find the prince, it's only before he violates one of the rules and is taken away by the temple. Kaine falters as well, and NieR must navigate the bullet hell by himself. Mastering the puzzles and overcoming the traps within with courage and wisdom, NieR frees the prince, who was almost met with a terrible fate, who finds his precious mask and hovers it proudly above his head. As he returns to his people, he recalls the motto of his father: "The rules do not exist to bind you, they exist so you may know your freedoms," and is prepared to lead his city into prosperity as the new king. He asks them what they want in return, but NieR turns down anything for the moment, asking instead they make a new rule that allows the people to change a rule by voting if they don't like another rule. He also asks if they ever learned anything about the Black Scrawl that claimed the old king, but unfortunately nothing they tried worked. While he earns a new sacred verse from this trial, it seems he must collect the rest to cure Yona. The new king thanks Thera as well and asks NieR to visit again in the future as friends, as he will never forget the help rendered by him. That night, he returns home and has a strange dream about encountering a boy speaking of a sealed verse and the Forest of Myth, and strangely after he wakes up it turns out Yona had the same dream too. He asks Popola about the Forest of Myth, and she shares she just got a strange and foreboding letter from the mayor of the Forest of Myth, who are normally bright and upbeat people. Sensing he must go there for a sealed verse anyway, NieR offers to check things out. Traveling north to the village, he finds things eerily quiet. As he approaches the disturbed mayor, they notice a strange meta-reality is now narrating everything they think, see, and do, in the game that is. The man explains this is the effect of the death dream, causing anyone cursed with it to fall asleep and live within their own dream world forever. It's highly contagious, spread by spoken words from person to person, and now NieR has fallen victim just by hearing of it and is absorbed into the mayor's dream. NieR and Weiss now wander the text-based adventure Dream Dungeon, solving riddles and using the power of words to undo the seal of the curse from inside. Gaining a sealed verse, they return home and Yona now informs NieR she's received word from her pen pal that he's sick and needs help, and asks NieR to help him. Reluctant to help the boy friendly to his daughter, NieR agrees anyway and heads south. As they approach the mansion, things seem strangely grey and haunted as the pre-rendered camera angles impart a tingling resident malice into Weiss and NieR. Moving past shifting paintings and oddly lifelike statues, they find matching keys to matching locked doors, and discover a young blindfolded boy. He introduces himself as Emil, but doesn't know any Yona or sending of any letter. It is true he is cursed though, as he has a petrifying gaze that and thus remains blindfolded at all times, but remarks his butler might know something about the letter. Handing NieR a star's key, they find the butler who explains he wanted to help Emil and sent one to NieR asking for help after hearing of his exploits. However, Yona was the one who answered instead, so he asks NieR to clear out the shades in an area where the cure for Emil's blindness can be found. Emil hears this request and insists he comes along, stating he can help at petrifying enemies, which indeed turns out to be useful and powerful. Entering the library where they believe the cure is, a strange new tome jumps out and begins attacking. Kaine arrives and renders help to destroy it, but the strange tome indeed holds a clue to nullifying Emil's curse. Emil apologizes for the trouble, but Kaine comforts him, revealing she is part shade and, like him, should accept their uniqueness as a strength, not a curse. The strange book also held the last sealed verse they were looking for, and now all they need to do is find Grimoire Noir and defeat it. Bidding farewell to Emil for now, they now return to the village where Yona is losing her fight against the disease. They're soon surprised to find Emil now collapsing at the gate of the village, warning everyone that a horde of shade is storming the village. There's no time to prepare as the shade beat down the gates and march in, backed up by a colossal shade that flanks the village, allowing no escape. NieR does his best against the giant, attempting to rip it apart limb by limb, but the foe has terrifying regenerative abilities. Kaine now comes in to lend aid, but the monster is merely slowed in its march to the library where many villagers, including Yona, are holed up. Pouring everything he's got and every magic spell he knows, the trio manage to fell the monster, but now he hears Yona cry out from inside. He rushes in to find the library overrun with more shade, but Emil is doing his best to fight and defend everyone. They back him up and deal with the mob, but now a miniature version of the monster outside slithers in and knocks aside Emil. Just as they succeed in knocking back this new threat, they prepare to seal it in the basement of the library, when suddenly from the shadows of blood scattered on the floor, NieR is pierced from behind in the shoulder. A shadowy dark man steps out and flies about, snatching Yona and wielding a grimoire of his own. The shades all bend a knee to this new man, who uses his magic to electrocute both NieR and Weiss. Weiss whites out and finds himself talking to the other grimoire, who introduces himself as Grimoire Noir, explaining they are the same and both serve a higher purpose. He reveals they were made to serve the Shadow Lord and are to fuse and set free the shades of the world. In fact, his encounter with NieR and their quest to collect the sealed verses were all set in motion by the Shadow Lord himself. NieR snaps to his senses, choosing to reject Noir's claims and stand and fight by the group, whom he accepts as friends. Noir lets loose a piercing glob of darkness to Weiss, and NieR leaps in to shield the tome, getting run through and collapsing from the wound. As the Shadow Lord and Noir now fly off with Yona, Noir states that Weiss will understand in time, and that despite how things seem, all things will return to them. With NieR down, there is still the large shade Kaine was holding back until now in the basement, as she admits she can't hold it off any longer and this fight is lost. She urges Emil to petrify her as a way to keep this door sealed, and there are no more options to fight and win anymore. Emil is reluctant, but complies, and as she petrifies over, she urges them all to get stronger without her, as NieR swears to save her and Yona. 5 years now pass since that fateful day, as we see the Shade are now stronger in daylight and even now wielding arms and armor. However, NieR is alive as well, and stronger than before, now wielding even greatswords with ease. He reflects that all searches in the past years have been fruitless, and between the Black Scroll and empowered shades the world population is quickly dwindling. Still, every day, NieR holds on to hope of finding the Shadow Lord with every shade he kills. As he hears of the old world falling to some sort of calamity and turning cities into metropolises of salt, he can't help but note it's so strange that Popola hasn't seemed to have aged a day after all these years. She dismisses the claim and instead hands him a letter from Emil saying the clue to curing petrification they found earlier has pointed him to something that can maybe also help Kaine, and he wants NieR to come visit him. Emil now shows them documents from over 1300 years ago from the year 2026, in which some group created an archive room beneath the mansion containing ways to control or cancel all forms of magic, including petrification. They see some mention of test subjects 6 and 7 and warning labels on the facility entrance. Entering the isometric view of the facility, they find shade everywhere, and more mention of number 6 and the Gestalt project. Strangely, something pains Emil the deeper they enter the facility, and they find not only was this facility made to create bioorganic weapons, but they disguised its location by building a mansion on top of it. Shockingly, they find pictures of 2 children, and one looks exactly like Emil, but Emil struggles to remember anything despite learning he's a living weapon. When they enter the core of the facility, they see a grotesque figure chained to a wall, and suddenly Emil recalls everything. He mentions how he and a group of kids all started out as normal children, but they were brought here to be turned into weapons. They were subjected to magic experimentation to create the perfect living weapon, and did so with number 6, Emil's sister. But they lost control of number 6, and so made number 7, Emil, as a weapon to petrify and seal number 6. NieR still considers Emil a friend, but number 6 suddenly stirs from its long sleep. Emil announces he plans to use his sister's power to lift his petrification curse, but warns them that if she swallows him up and Emil is lost or tries to hurt them, then they must kill him. Number 6 indeed crashes down and swallows Emil, so NieR and Weiss hurry to free him. She is immune to all physical damage, and so they must use their powerful magic to combat her. Within, Emil sees his sister thank him for ending her as her power now begins flowing into him. However, the transformation now warps him into a similar looking skeletal monster as her, despite full control over his abilities now. Weeping at his horrifying visage now, Emile feels ashamed, but NieR comforts his friend, understanding his plight, and still here for him no matter what. Accepting of his body now, Emile rejoins the group, and they travel back to Kaine now, where Emile is easily able to lift the curse and free her. Unfortunately, this frees the monster from before, but NieR and Emile are much stronger from these past 5 years, and they are easily able to definitively crush their foe. Kaine comes to and is able to recognize all of her friends, even Emile, to his relief. She's briefed on what's happened these past 5 years, but Devola and Popola inform them that despite saving the villagers are fearful of Emile and Kaine and wish to have them leave immediately, which infuriates NieR. After events and cools down, Popola then says she learned that the Shadow Lord is somehow connected to the lost shrine that Grimoire Weiss was discovered in originally. The group returns to where it all began and find a new General of Darkness there. Combating it, they find it much stronger than the previous centuries, and during the fight, one of its weapons gets flung loose and impales Kaine. Quickly killing the monster, they rush to her side, but she instead warns them to stay back. Dark Script starts crawling around her, and suddenly the shade within her takes control, and the group must fend off Shade Kaine's frenzied attacks. Quelling the shade, Kaine returns to normal, but she's reluctant to stay with them given this constant threat. They resolve to stick with her despite her shade side, and at this time they find a new stone relic and a magic barrier behind it. Picking it up, they return it to Popola, who believes it to be one part of a cipher key that can unlock the way to the Shadow Lord. With clues on where to find the next few, they return to familiar sights and even hear some familiar tales. Returning to Facade, they meet the king, who's more grown up, and are in time to witness his marriage to Fira. Right at the height of the ceremony, when the newlyweds have sealed their union, a wolf-like shade now storms in and assaults Fira, with a pack of desert wolves behind it. They drive the wolves away, but they see it's too late to save Fira, who dies in the arms of the king moments after becoming his queen. In his grief, he swears death to all wolves and must be talked down in his solo call to arms. Volunteering to charge into the literal wolves' den, the group is ready to avenge Fira alongside the king and the men of the mask. As the king succeeds in slaying the beast that murdered his wife, they recover the last bit of the key to the Shadow Lord, and they prepare to engage him next. As they seek Popola for any last words of wisdom, Weiss finds it awfully suspicious that the pieces of the key to the Shadow Lord were so easily found and assembled. After Devola and Popola give a hesitant well-wishing on his final journey to rescue Yona, they return to the Lost Shrine and the way forward is open for them. Beyond is a surprisingly idyllic palace, wherein they learn humans long ago died of the Black Disease, but learned to survive by separating their souls from their bodies and residing in corresponding shells. Beyond, they are shocked to find Devola and Popola before them, urging NieR to turn back and giving up on rescuing Yona. They turn out to be powerful mages who have lived for hundreds of years and were hoping NieR wouldn't get so close to the truth. As it turns out, the sealed verses came from the twins in the first place, and who merely loaned a small portion of the power out to Weiss. After a brief fight, they reveal they work for the Shadow Lord, but NieR must face the truth in order to know why. Next, they find a classical ballroom, but the ghosts of people past now seem to turn into powerful shades and attack them, culminating into a giant armored boar that seems to regenerate endlessly. Unable to outdamage a Teeling, they have no choice but to run, but then they are helped out by the King of Facade, here to help out his friends in need. Alongside his royal guards, they stall the beast and buy time for NieR and his friends to move ahead, and once done, pour everything they have into killing the seemingly immortal beast. Landing the final blow, the king is mortally wounded himself, and slumping over, he's glad to not only have helped out his friends, but to also soon be seeing Fira in death again. In the next room, they encounter the twins again, who reveal more about the truth of things. 1300 years ago, humanity was on the brink of dying due to the Black Disease. Among the many pursuits for a cure, Project Gestalt was founded, in which humans created artificial shells called replicants that could survive the disease and learn to separate their own souls and put them in these replicant shells. The problem is that unexpectedly, these replicants somehow became sentient on their own and became the residents of the current world. That is, NieR, Kaine, and everyone currently are all simply replicants. As for the original humans, including the ones claimed by the Black Disease, they still exist in this world as shades. And so all this time, NieR and the other replicants have been fearing or killing the original humans who made them in the first place to save them from the disease. The twins, as well as NieR, are unique, as the twins are actually android observers made for the task of controlling the other replicants, and they need NieR's body as the original owner wants it back now. During this fight, Devola is killed, and in her grief, Popola cries out in explosive rage. Emile shields them and begins to move them from Popola's fury, but she latches onto them, determined to destroy them all. Promising them everything will be fine, Emil bids farewell to his friends and sacrifices himself to Popola's explosion, allowing his friends to press on. With their magical energies clashing, Popola is annihilated as there is soon no trace left of her or Emil. Disheartened after losing another close friend so quickly, NieR is slapped to his feet by Kaine, and in the next room, they not only see Yona at long last, but are confronted by the Shadow Lord himself and Grimoire Noir. They clash, and NieR manages to edge out a win, but before he can deliver the final blow, Yona stands up and now runs towards her father. However, to NieR's shock and surprise, it's not him, but instead the Shadow Lord, who is actually the original NieR that he's a replicant of, and was the primary subject of the original Gestalt program. As it turns out, this is the original Yona's soul now residing in the current Yona's body, as per the Gestalt program. However, the original Yona can feel Yona's love for this NieR and doesn't want to separate them. Stepping into the light, the original Yona leaves replicant Yona's body, and in anguish the Shadow Lord lashes out in rage at NieR. As they fight this final duel, Weiss loses all of his strength and fades away, leaving NieR to end the fight on his own. With the Shadow Lord now beaten down to his knees, NieR barely hesitates as he cuts him down once and for all. Returning to Yona, Weiss speaks up, explaining he lost his physical form and is only a voice for now, but states Yona is fine but needs NieR to call her back in order to awaken. Recalling all the things Yona loved in this world, including their love for each other, NieR is overjoyed to see his daughter again at long last. Opting to step away quietly, Kaine moves away, but NieR pauses her, inviting her to stay with himself and Yona, but she declines and moves on. Elsewhere, we see that beyond, the original soul of NieR is finally reunited with his original Yona at last too. We also see elsewhere the head of Emil has survived Popola's blast and now hops along in search of his friends. We now see Kaine is in fact struggling against the Black Scrawl and the shade that has possessed her named Tyrion, as her body is beginning to break down and become a berserk shade. She turns to NieR, to whom she's grown fond of, and asks him to kill her, and Tyrion even offers NieR a choice to help save Kaine. Tyrion can pin her down for a moment, in which case NieR can either mercy kill her as she asked, or he can trade his existence for hers, which would make her a normal human, but everyone would lose memory of him forever as he would cease to exist. As he defeats Kaine's shade, he now stands before the crucial choice, and despite risking losing everything he's fought so hard to gain so far, and even the very save data out of the game, NieR chooses to sacrifice himself for Kaine, ending his entire existence. As Kaine now wakes up, Yona comes near to thank her for saving her from the Shadow Lord, and a confused Kaine only has glimpses of the memory of NieR. Yona remarks on how pretty the lunar tear flower is that she wears, and as they both look to the bright sky, a real tear falls from Kaine's eyes as she feels like she's found something precious. NieR has enjoyed the success of selling over 900,000 copies worldwide.